Good evening. I'm Ritu Sethi, Director of the League of Artisans, a not-for-profit established in 2022. Since when we have been supporting artisanal skills and knowledge as a vital response to global challenges, trusting in the transformational power to build a better future for people and for planet. So on behalf of my co-directors, Sol Maranucci and Carrie Sommers, and our Artisan Advisory Board, I welcome you all to our third webinar, a run-up to the first ever Leek Textile Week to be held in September. Under the umbrella title of Textiles Transformed, From Leek to Liberty via India, these webinars weave the threads of the past into the present, spinning new connections with Indian artisans whose knowledge helped transform the local industry. But before I hand over to our moderator, just a bit of housekeeping and a little bit of information. First, thank you for responding to the online poll that was posted at the start of the webinar. We will be doing the same at the end and would be grateful if you could give us your suggestions for future talks. Second, while we would have loved to have seen you and heard your voices, as attendees, your audio is centrally muted and your video turned off. But please, do post your questions to the panelists in the Q&A below. And if you would like a specific speaker to respond, do specify who you're addressing the question to. Also, if you have comments and suggestions, do add them to the chat box. In the chat box, you will note that we have added some useful links. Do check them out. For those unable to attend today, this webinar is being recorded for posting onto our YouTube channel at leagueofartisans.org. The support and funds for this webinar and the Leek Textile Week is from the National Lottery through Arts Council England. We've also received funding and support from Outside Arts and from Neela House Lady Bamford Foundation. And now on to the main event. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Anuradha Singh, who will be moderating the webinar today. Anuradha is the head of the Lady Bamford Foundation and Director Neela House Jaipur, a non-profit initiative supported by JCB India. She has been at the helm from its foundation, guiding its development into a space for conversation and action around value chain sustainability, craft preservation, and action around design innovation. Her past experiences of over 2 decades have included her work as Additional Director, Jawahar Kala Kendra Jaipur, where she brought in landmark programs like the first edition of the Indian Ceramics Triennale and the exhibition New Textiles, New Traditions. She has played a vital role as a member of the core founding team of the Jaipur Virasat Foundation, an organization involved in preserving the cultural heritage of Rajasthan. During her tenure, she spearheaded the Jaipur Heritage International Festival, Jaipur Literary Festival, and Jodhpur RIF. Over to you, Anu.
Thank you so much, Rituji. And welcome to all of you who have just joined us from all over the world. Literally, if I may say so, following the thread. So as the moderator, I'm really thrilled to be part of this engaging panel on silk, on cotton, flax, exploring the rich histories, the cultural significance, and the contemporary relevance of each fiber. And I don't want to hold anyone anymore. Let's just delve right into the first presentation. I'd like to welcome Karen Selk, who has found that all things silk provide her with a thread that binds together travel, research, writing, artwork, education, and managing a successful business selling silk yarns and fibers, and this also over 35 years. She has given hundreds of workshops and presentations on silk and weaving around the world and has written numerous articles on the subject. Her passion for learning about everything silk has led her throughout Asia and the wild silk forests of India for more than 30 years. The culmination of this research has been published in a book, In Search of Wild Silk, Exploring a Village Industry in the Jungles of India. She lives in Salish Sea on Salt Spring Island in Canada. I'm going to hand over to you, Karen. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you, Anu. I'm going to share my screen now. Making that, hoping all goes well. There we go. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to share a journey that began in the 1970s when I wove the scarf that you see here using silk threads. That simple scarf led me on a lifelong exploration, immersing myself in the rich silk culture of Asia, which became my silk classroom. During my quest, I learned of lesser-known silks, often referred to as wild silks, tussar, muga, and eri. But it wasn't until I ventured into the heart of India, to remote hamlets, that I truly understood the profound connection between people, land, and the timeless process of rearing silkworms, crafting yarn, and weaving cloth of soft gold, tawny brown, papyrus tones of wild silk. Thomas Wardle, dyer by profession, entrepreneur, and manufacturer of dyed and block printed textiles from Leek, Great Britain, also saw wild silk in this light. He became an advocate for silk and natural dyes from India in the latter part of the 19th century during British colonialism and the art and culture period in Europe. During his excursions to India, he became enamored with wild silk and tussar in particular. He saw its potential for export and eliminating poverty. He worked tirelessly to find a way to dye tussar silk, which had eluded those before him. He showcased his successful results at the Paris Exposition in 1878, increasing global demand for India's yarn and fabrics, providing employment for many thousands. Thomas Wardle worked with his skilled wife, Elizabeth, to perfect methods of stitching to enhance the qualities of tussar for needlework. She was the founder and director of the Leek Embroidery School, which developed a distinctive Leek style of densely packed stitches, displaying the rich tones of vegetable dyes produced by Thomas. The tale of wild silk is an intimate journey, woven with threads of sustainability, environmental friendliness, and the resilience of indigenous tribal people who are respectfully called Adivasi, living in Eastern India. The livelihood of this community has been intricately tied to this craft for thousands of years, deeply rooted in tradition and spirituality. Gandhi's principles of lifting the status of women and Adivasi people were influential in writing the Constitution in 1950. A Ministry of Textiles was established to oversee departments like the Central Silk Board and Cotton and Jute Boards, encouraging the use of science and technology with compassion to achieve their goals. The scientists and engineers of the Central Silk Board are dedicated and committed to improving the lives of the Adivasi people. With their slow and gentle introduction of scientific processes, rearers are combining their traditional knowledge and methods with a scientific approach to revitalize this forest-based occupation into a robust industry brimming with economic potential. Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha are the largest producers of tussar silk. Tussar caterpillars prefer to carry out much of their life cycle out in the forest. Until about 15 to 20 years ago, only men reared tussar silkworms. Now women do as well. In 2009, Mr. Hussain of Kartal Estate Sericulture Center shifted tussar silkworm rearing on this 125 acres from traditional male rearers to a group of Adivasi women because the men's crops were so poor. Do we know where this story's going? With training, the 57 women have turned the production into one of the highest in the state. They now earn their own income, which is put directly into their bank accounts and have higher status in their community. Santoshi of the Rathria tribe won an award for the best crop in 2016. The government sent her to Bengaluru, formerly Bangalore, to receive her award. That was the first time Santoshi had ever left her village. She told me, now we earn 80% of our income from Tassar and 20% from our agricultural crops. We have built a new house, and last year we bought a motorbike. We are very happy to be farmers making a good living. Tassar caterpillars are usually green, but once in a while, a recessive gene produces yellow and blue, which is an auspicious sign for the rearers. Silkworms eat non-stop, interrupted only by molting their skins 4 times. Tropical Tassar silkworms feed on a variety of trees, but they prefer Asan and Arjun, which grow naturally from 25 to 30 feet in the forest. The Central Silk Board has introduced planting and pruning host trees in plantations, which has transformed the traditional hunt and peck for cocoons to an organized system, making rearing easier and more profitable for the farmers. Plantation reared Tassar have a 50 to 60% rate of survival. In the natural forest, only 20 to 30% make it to maturity. Leaves are transformed within 2 glands inside the silkworm's body into a semi-liquid protein called fibroin. As fibroin is extruded from the silkworm's body, it is coated with a second gummy protein called sericin. The combination of these 2 proteins solidifies on contact with the air, creating a strand of silk filament, which is spun into a cocoon. No wonder we think it's such a magical fiber. Over a 3-day period, the cocoon is created with 1 continuous strand measuring about 1 kilometer or 3/4 of a mile long. When out in the forest or plantation, the silkworms are vulnerable to all types of weather, disease, and scores of predators, ranging from birds and wasps to even bears. Day and night, rearers guard, protecting the larvae with slingshots and mud balls, bows and arrows, slings with rocks, and sticky resin on the end of bamboo rods to catch lethal wasps. Nowadays, only a few men stay in the huts overnight, keeping watch, while the others can return home to their families. Today, seed cocoons for production are kept in an outdoor netted tent for mating. Each mother moth has 250 to 350 eggs in her body. After the males mate and fertilize the eggs, the mother moth is put into her own bag to lay her eggs. The sole purpose of moths is to mate and lay eggs. Their bodies are filled with reproductive organs only. There's no digestive system or eating apparatus, and they die within 5 to 7 days. A fluid can be extracted from the mother moth's abdomen, smeared on a slide, and checked under a microscope. Diseased eggs are destroyed, and healthy eggs are washed and packaged. This simple and effective method reduces mortality rates throughout the life cycle, increasing income for the silk farmers. The Central Silk Board is training more and more rearers to take over the vital job of providing disease-free laying eggs for themselves so they can become more independent. With all the improvements being made, sericulture is becoming a larger part and sometimes the sole part of rearers' income rather than a supplemental income. During the last 30 years, I've been visiting the rearers. Their income has increased 50%. Even with all the scientific improvements and the great care provided by the rearers, the mortality rate from egg to cocoon is still 50 to 60% for Tassar caterpillars. Despite these odds, raising wild silkworms continues to provide a sustainable, healthy lifestyle preferred by many. The rearing, spinning, and weaving among the 3 types of silk, Tassar, Muga, and Eri, is very different. For Tassar, spinners and weavers do not live in the same village as the rearers. Spinners, reelers, and weavers live in tidy and colorful villages they call clusters. Women usually do the reeling and spinning while men weave. The highest quality silk is called reeled silk. Silk filaments are unwound directly from the cocoon that was spun from one continuous strand. Traditionally, Tassar silk was released from the cocoon by thigh reeling. Strands from 5 to 8 cocoons are rolled and twisted on the thigh and wound onto a device called a natwa. While thigh reeling endures as a practice, the introduction of simple reeling machines designed by the Central Silk Board has become a significant supplement to this age-old tradition. The government not only compensates the women for training time, childcare is provided as well. Following training, they are given reeling machines to take back to their villages to train others. Simultaneously, additional training is provided to help with things that we don't think much of, like accounting and setting up self-help groups, empowering them to become more self-sufficient and less reliant on their spouses. Men are predominantly the weavers in Tassar country. The women assist by making yarn and constantly filling bobbins with simple equipment like bicycle wheels. Pit looms are the most prevalent in this region because they are easy and inexpensive to build. The treadles are in the pit dug into the earthen floor. There are a few frame looms, which are similar to looms used in North America, Europe, and other countries. We will travel to Assam, which is the golden state on the right-hand side of the map, to see the two other wild silks, Muga and Eri. 87% of the world's Muga is raised in the northeastern state of Assam. The Brahmaputra River runs through Assam from east to west, creating an ecosystem perfect for Muga caterpillars to thrive. Traditional rearing practices for Muga were similar to those of Tassar, being conducted out in the open forest until the Central Silk Board introduced planting and pruning host trees in plantations. The caterpillars are multivoltine, which means they can produce 5 to 6 crops per year. The quality of a commercial crop, which is used to produce silk yarn and fabric, is linked to the season in which it is cultivated. The remaining seasons are valuable for producing the best seed or egg crops. When the caterpillars are ready to spin, they crawl down the tree to a banana barrier. The rearers collect the caterpillars and put them into net jollies filled with curled leaves. The caterpillars crawl to find the perfect niche to spin their cocoons. Muga rearers are mostly men. Women haven't entered the profession yet. Like Tassar, Muga's caretakers are dedicated and provide the best care possible, protecting them from inclement weather, disease, and predators. We crossed a bridge made of bamboo pole to meet Pankaj, who is tending his baby Muga caterpillars. Pankaj has a Bachelor of Commerce degree. He told us, after years of trying unsuccessfully to get a government job, I returned to Muga rearing. I'm happy things turned out that way. I enjoy the country lifestyle. A government job would be too confined. My wife, 13-year-old son, 3-year-old daughter, and I grow our own food and rice. My mother and father live here as well. My father was a school teacher, and we raised Muga all through my growing up. My wage for Muga is 6 times more than minimum wage. I just bought a new car. Muga production was slowly increasing until about 2010. Industrial pollution from coal production, spray from insecticides used in the tea gardens, and increased temperature from climate change are causing huge challenges for the delicate caterpillars. In the 1990s, Muga females laid 200 to 250 eggs. By 2010, just 20 years later, their production is down to only 120 to 150 eggs. The Central Silk Board is working in their labs to find solutions for these problems. As an example, when we were there, they were working on finding probiotics to help caterpillars' digestive system cope with pesticides. After mating, female moths are tied with a string under their wings and put onto a karika made of grasses, bound together and bent to make a hook. The females lay their eggs on the karikas so the rearers do not have to roam to find the eggs. Muga are a bit more delicate than Tassar. Even with all the loving care they get, their mortality rate is 70%, 70. The yarn and fabric made from Muga cocoons glistens in orange gold. Upholding tradition, a distinctive method of reeling Muga is done by women twisting threads on their forearm. This age-old technique requires two people sitting opposite each other with the beer reeler between them. This simple beer consists of two upright posts, excuse me, supporting a horizontal rod that holds a large bamboo spool which gathers the finished yarn. One person transfers the released filaments from 8 to 10 cocoons to the reeler, who rolls the strands along her right forearm, simultaneously pushing the bamboo spool to draw in the finished yarn. The filaments of muga cocoons are more delicate than tussar, making them more challenging to reel by a machine. Although reeling machines provided by the Central Silk Board are becoming more widely accepted, in 2021, more than half of the muga yarn continues to be reeled by the traditional beer. In Assam villages, men do the rearing and women do the spinning, reeling, and weaving. Muga cloth is woven on simple frame looms and has always been treasured among the Assamese for all rites of passage from birth to death. Erie is raised in Assam with approximately 132,000 families producing 96% of the world's erie. In contrast to tussar and muga caterpillars living on trees in the forest, Assamese women cultivate erie silkworms on their verandas and rearing houses with 80% success rate. Erie is more robust and less susceptible to disease, making it easier to raise and, of course, more lucrative. Traditionally, erie was raised for the pupa, protein-rich pupa, which is a delicacy. Women receive 55 to 60% more income for the pupa than the silken shell of the cocoon. The mature domesticated caterpillars eat a variety of leaves. Its favorite food, castor, is an annual plant which produces the best quality silk. It must be supplemented with perennials throughout the year. Erie produces 5 to 6 crops annually, allowing a well-organized rearing house produce up to 13 crops per year. Babies hatching, 1 to 2 week old silkworms feeding on trays, older silkworms eating from bouquets of hanging leaves, cocoons waiting to hatch out moths, and mating moths can all take place simultaneously. Erie farmers must feed their silkworms fresh leaves 4 to 5 times a day because that's the only way they have of taking moisture or liquid into their bodies. In addition to the constant feeding, rearers must constantly clean the caterpillar's manure. Unlike tussar and muga, an erie silkworm takes frequent breaks while spinning its cocoon, resulting in a hole in the egg in the end of the egg-shaped cocoon constructed of many short filaments. Depending on the eco-race, erie cocoons are either white or brick red. When we wandered into Nilu and Dalgat's compound, the veranda was filled with poles hanging with bouquets of leaves and feeding caterpillars. They were ripe and ready to spin. Nilu would pick each and every single caterpillar and roll it between her fingers and listen. If the sound was hollow, the silkworm was ready to spin its cocoon. She gently put them into a net filled with curled leaves for the silkworms to find their special niche to spin their cocoons. Nilu says, I start each crop with about 200 to 250 eggs. I will have 6 kilos of empty cocoons and 45 kilos of pupa per crop. We remove the pupa from the cocoon to sell in the market. I make nearly 3 times as much from the pupa as the cocoons. Just like muga, the female moth is tied under her wings onto bundles of grass to lay her eggs after mating. Female moths lay 300 to 400 eggs. Since 2002, there's been an influx of government funds to the Central Silk Board and state sericulture departments to promote silk production in Assam. As a result, classes are being provided to raise awareness of hygiene, healthcare, and organization in erie rearing houses. After training, rearers are provided with 90% of the cost for building or renovating a simple bamboo and plaster rearing house. From 2001 to 2018, production increased almost 4-fold due to subsidies for building rearing houses, training, and creating self-help groups. The silk filaments of Uri cannot be unraveled from the cocoon to make the highest quality reeled yarn because the cocoon is made of all those short fibers. After the pupa is removed from the cocoon, village women use a takli drop spindle to spin Uri yarn. Traditionally, women spun enough yarn to make clothes for their families. Starting in 2010, an exciting new international market began developing for Uri cloth. Government, non-governmental organizations, and small entrepreneurs are working to shift this traditional occupation toward a more commercial venture, providing self-employment and a steady source of family income in Adivasi villages while maintaining their traditional way of life. Fabric woven from Uri is denser, heavier, and warmer than other silks. Frame looms like those used to weave muga cloth are also used to weave Uri. Through Thomas Wardle's respect and admiration for India's knowledge of wild silk and natural dyes, he created a collaborative relationship between the two cultures, increasing demand for India's textiles while providing employment for many thousands of people. It's given me great pleasure to share with you the story of this intimate connection between artisans and the land.
Thank you so much, Karen. Wow, 35 years of dedication to silk. That's really, truly inspiring. It's really been a privilege. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and learnings with us. Next, we have Lorna and Stephen Knight. After teaching food and textile technology in middle schools in England for 10 years, Lorna set up her own business, running couture sewing workshops, passing on the technique and inside secrets from the design houses to dressmakers interested in improving and extending their skills. Since then, she's also written 7 sewing references books, taught now at the V&A Museum in London, and created an online class for craftsy.com. In 2014, she opened her studio in Bradnob, just outside Leek, where she continues to teach her workshops along with her husband, Stephen, a former head teacher who runs the haberdashery side of the business. He also services and repairs sewing machines as an authorized brother and baby lock UK engineer. Over the last 3 years, Lorna and Stephen have been carrying out a flax experiment in order to learn for themselves how this plant is processed into fiber and to ascertain the suitability of flax production on a small to medium scale in the UK. Over to you, Lorna and Stephen.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll just share screen. Here we go. So, are we? There we go. Thank you for including us in today's webinar. We're delighted to be sharing with you our initial flax to linen experience with you from here just outside of Leek in Staffordshire. Flax, depending on the variety, can grow up to about 1 metre tall when it's grown for its fibre content. We've grown a variety called avian. The fibres are found in bundles behind the bark and around the core of the stem. The fibres are released and then spun and woven to make cloth. The resulting cloth is called linen. You may also hear flax being called linseed, but generally this is used to refer to shorter plants which produce a higher yield of seeds and are grown for their nutritional benefits. An indication of how useful flax has been over time is the translation of its Latin name, which means line most useful.
I've been interested in flax and linen since I was at school and intrigued by the fact that it's possible to create a fibre and fabric from the stem of a plant. I could visualize fibres unraveling from a sheep's fleece, a cotton ball, and the chrysalis of a silk moth, but found it difficult to believe that a plant stem could produce the crisp white damask tablecloth my mother would carefully launder and press when I was a child. Because of this, I'd always been keen to grow my own. In the spring of 2021, Patrick Grant, a socially conscious businessman working in the field of sustainable clothing and possibly best known as a judge on the BBC's The Great British Sewing Bee, was involved with a project in Blackburn, where a piece of neglected land adjacent to the Leeds to Liverpool Canal was being used to grow flax for fibre. Their aim was to grow flax to process, spin and weave into enough linen cloth to produce a pair of jeans. When we heard about this project and that they were looking for volunteers to help harvest the flax, we as a family were keen to get involved. We had a great day with many other enthusiastic volunteers, and the knowledge we gained gave us the push we needed to attempt to grow our own.
Historically, there's evidence that flax has been cultivated in Syria, Iran, Turkey since 8000 BCE. Hieroglyphs show the ancient Egyptians with drop spindles. They made linen clothes for themselves, ideal for their climate, and wrapped their mummies in linen to embalm them. The Romans were known to make ropes and linen sails. Linen production spread, and by 2000 BCE was being grown here in the UK. For many centuries, much of the linen produced here in Britain was on a small scale, with each family or community growing and processing sufficient for their own use. By the mid-1700s, demand for linen in Britain was high, and although much of it was imported, the Industrial Revolution meant that the UK led the world in the textile machinery. This did not last, and cotton production took over during the 1800s, leading to the decline of the flax production here in the UK. This century, the flax for fibre industry remains in northeastern Europe and the Baltic countries, India, Egypt and China. Although the recent awareness of environmental issues and interest in sustainable fabrics has created a renewed interest in natural materials within the UK.
Our personal journey to discover more about flax and linen has brought us far more than we imagined. As soon as we announced our intention to grow a small plot at our studio near Leek, many people started to share their knowledge with snippets of information that they'd heard or articles they'd read on the subject. The Leek Guild of Spinners, Dyers and Weavers took me under their wing to teach me the necessary skills, and individuals who'd tried growing some in their gardens shared their experiences. One of the most valuable sources of information for us came from Flaxland in Stroud in Gloucestershire. Simon and Anne have been growing flax for many years now, and from their experience have been running courses and advising organisations on its processing. It's so long since linen was grown commercially in Britain, knowledge has been lost, and Simon and Anne have been at the forefront of researching and discovering how best to recreate the processing stages with improvised equipment, since our industrial machinery is no longer available. Over the winter of 2022, we prepared the ground, and at the end of April, we sowed about 20 square metres with flaxseed. The seeds germinated in about a week to 10 days, and through May and June, the plants grew well, reaching almost 80 to 100 centimetres in height. The first flowers appeared in July after 62 days and lasted for about 3 weeks in total. The interesting thing about the flowers is that each lasts only for 1 day and is replaced by a new one the following day. We would arrive at our studio in the morning to see a beautiful sea of blue flowers, but by mid-afternoon, the petals would all have fallen off. After flowering, the seed pods appeared and the plants began to turn a golden colour. At the beginning of August, knowing that the time from sowing to harvest should be approximately 100 days, we kept a closer watch on the changes in the crop. On the 9th of August, during some extensive research, we decided it was time to harvest. It was earlier than we'd planned, but a hot spell of weather seemed to have dried out the flax. With no experts to advise us, we were just guessing and hoping we were on the right track. The plants aren't cut down, as the stems are tough and would blunt the blade, but simply pulled out of the ground. The roots are short, and by pulling the plant from the ground, this maximizes the length of the stem. The longer the fibres, producing a better quality of linen. We laid the flax plants on the ground to dew ret, so that the dew, sun, wind and rain would soften the stems, and we turned them every week. Retting is the process required to release the fibres from the pith and core, as they are held together with pectins. It can actually be carried out in two ways. One way is by retting in a pool of water. It's quicker, but the compounds which leach from the flax into the water can cause environmental problems. The rivers in Ireland were said to run yellow at certain times of the year because of the water runoff from flax retting. Dew retting, like we did, takes longer but is less damaging to the environment. The flax is spread out on the ground to weather. Then over the course of a few weeks, it is turned regularly with a long stick. There is less control when dew retting compared with the process when it's carried out in water. So over-retting, which weakens the fibres, is more of a possibility. When retted and dried, we stored our flax ready to process, but we needed to learn more before we approached this stage.
The processing. The traditional names of the stages of processing describe how the flax is prepared, ready for spinning and weaving. Rippling. This is the process of removing the seed bolls from the top of the plant by pulling through a large comb. The seeds are then released by crushing or beating the seed bolls. In our first year, we didn't carry out the rippling stage before retting, but our local wild rabbits enjoyed them instead, because when the flax was laid on the ground to dew ret, the seeds were at a perfect height for them to nibble. The following year, we collected the seeds and have planted them this year with good germination results. The initial stage of releasing the fibres is to break the outer bark and inner core. This is done in the breaking process by crimping and crushing the flax stems. The dried bark and core breaks up and falls away. Scutching. This is where more of the unwanted bark and core is removed by placing the flax on a hard surface and beating it. Hackling. Starting initially with a large comb or grid of long nails and then progressively finer teethed comb, the scutched lengths are pulled through to remove more of the waste and short fibres, or what's called tow, leaving long, smooth flax fibres. The more time spent at this stage will make the spinning easier and produces finer, softer linen. The tow isn't wasted and can be used to make rope or twine. It can also be spun in a similar way to wool, or mixing it with wool fibre for spinning. We found the best way to make something useful from the tow is to felt it using a mechanical embellisher machine. This technique, unlike spinning and weaving, requires less skill, just time. We produced a small waistcoat and hat, as you can see.
Traditionally, a distaff or cone was used to spread the fibre finely for it to be drawn down for spinning with a wheel or drop spindle. However, we've adopted a method recommended by Simon from Flaxland, where a long sliver is prepared in a length of guttering and then threaded through a series of guides ready for spinning. This gives a longer length to work with and seems to us to be easier to handle, although we have a long way to go before we can call ourselves experienced spinners. Our progress so far has seen us spin sufficient passable single-ply yarn to use as the weft in a length of cloth. We used commercially produced cotton for the warp and a plain weave, and we're delighted with it as our first attempt. Going forward, when our spinning skills have improved and we are able to produce a finer, more consistent yarn, we plan to produce a piece of fabric with both warp and weft entirely from our homegrown seed. Ultimately, we hope to make a wearable garment, but that might take some time. Nearly 3 years on from our first harvesting experience, we feel we have come a long way with our knowledge, but realise there is so much more to learn. One of our reasons for getting involved with the original project was to discover if it would be possible to bring back linen production on a small scale to Britain. Linen is a sustainable material and flax is suited to our climate, so we would encourage anyone to do this. We have in fact talked to a local farmer in the Staffordshire moorlands who has taken some of our flaxseed to grow a small sample plot this year. From what we've learned, the investment required for farmers to adopt flax for fibre production commercially is significant. There is limited large-scale machinery available at present to undertake the harvesting and processing here in Britain, although trials are underway in Scotland. Farms in Dundee, Oban and Edinburgh have grown 3 different varieties to test their suitability and yield. If feasible, a network of farms have discussed the potential of an equipment co-op to invest in machinery. In Essex, we have heard about a farmer who is presently growing flax. They have an arrangement with a Belgian company who sends over the machinery to harvest flax, taking it back to Belgium to process there. There are no doubt many more small projects we aren't yet aware of. We carried out our flax to linen project primarily to find out if it was possible for us to create a piece of linen cloth from flaxseed, and we are pleased to have succeeded. We've been delighted to have had so much interest in our project from local people who've visited us on open days to see for themselves the fascinating transition of flax into linen cloth. While we recognise not everyone will want to plant a patch of flax in their gardens, we hope we have encouraged people to think about the linen fabric and all the time and work involved in creating it. With more people considering sustainable fashion and turning to the idea of owning fewer but better quality clothes, this shows why you should care more about the fabric that we use. Thank you for listening, and we hope this has given you an insight into our small project. Thank you.
Big thank you to Lorna and Stephen Knight. Your recent ventures into flax experimentations are really so exciting and demonstration commitment, I think, to innovation and sustainability in textile production. Really, really exciting work. Thank you so much. So grateful that both of you are here with us today. I'd now like to welcome Ghatit Laheru. He's the director of Khamir. Ghatit holds degrees in journalism and management of not-for-profits. He's associated with Khamir, a craft organization in Gujarat, for more than 15 years in various capacities and became director in 2019. He enjoys work on issues of community development. He believes in the Gandhian approach of rural development and interested in khadi and handicrafts. He was one of the key members of the team which worked on Kala cotton, an indigenous cotton grown in and around Little Run of Kutch. He is part of a team which promotes hand spinning of cotton and wool in Kutch. He wishes to secure a brighter future for the traditional artisans, weavers, and the spinners of Kutch and India. Ghatit Bhai, over to you.
Thank you so much. Let me share the presentation. So first, let me introduce Khamir, a craft organization based in Kutch. And Kutch is situated in the sort of westernmost part of India, and Khamir works with the traditional artisans of this region. And one of the main objective was to revive the traditional craft and make them viable for the second generation, so that they can join the traditional craft occupations. Kala cotton was started in 2007. And predominantly the aim was to revive the weaving of this region. This is a short staple cotton variety. and it is sort of Kutch is a dry land, and we have a very less rainfall, and this is an indigenous variety peculiar to our region. And so Khamir started working with the weavers of this region, and we did 3 exhibitions in Delhi, and then we identified this local crop, and we thought to revive the entire value chain around cotton, local cotton variety, so that we can produce a locally available cotton, and we can support the weavers of this region. This is a short staple. It doesn't require any sort of irrigation facility, nor it required any synthetic sort of any fertilizer or that kind of support. And it was grown in entire Kutch region, and slowly it started growing in the westernmost part, where there is a lot of salinity in that region. We collaborated with a producer company promoted by Satvik, and the farmers were the owners of this company. Next. And this was the complete value chain where we work with the farmers, ginners, spinners, and weavers. And we launched this initiative at Delhi in 2011. We worked on the research side because in indigenous cotton, the staple length is very small, and it is not easy to sort of spin this variety of cotton. So there was a lot of research was done on the spinning side, and as Kutch and Saurashtra has a long tradition of Khadi organizations, and many veteran Gandhians in this region really helped us by providing their insight into the cotton. When we launched this, we gave it a very simple name of Kala cotton. Kala is a close pod, because in indigenous cotton we have 3 portions of a cotton. We have a calyx, which is an outer portion. Then we have a raw cotton, and we have a seed. So, and each portion is a 30% of the weightage. So it is a close pod. Nowadays we are having hybrid and BT cotton, which is an open pod sort of system. And this was the journey of Kala cotton, where many people joined this process of creating this value chain. And as I said earlier, we received a lot of support from many sort of Gandhian organization, Khadi people working in this sector. Next. These are some of the name of the people who were part of this journey. Many of them are now not alive, but we continuously receive their blessing to work in this journey to support the weavers and spinners. Next. Next. So we work with Ambar Charkha, where we started our spinning work, and at present we work with 25 Ambar spinners. Then we did a review of Kala cotton, and we found that there is a need to sort of revive the pure way of spinning. And Archana Shah, founder of Bandage and a Khadi and a textile expert, really gave us her a lot of insight to start the pure spinning. So we went a step ahead and started working with the Peti Charkha. Next. So this is a very small instrument of, it is a box-like charkha, and one can easily spin on it. And mostly in Kutch, we have a Kshatriya Darbar community where the women are not allowed to sort of go outside for any sort of occupational work. They do all the hand spinning at home. And we started working with one village, and initially we received support from Neela House and also Mr. Vikram Lal to expand this activity. And we slowly expanded this now to 125 spinners across 14 villages. And this women spin at their home, and Khamir provides the carded cotton at their home. And also we collect the finished yarn. Next. We also promoted the natural yarn dyeing in the region. We learn the basic skill from Dastkar Andhra, and we initiated one dyeing unit at Khamir. And now the dyer, Khengar Bhai, and the entire family is operating from Bujodi village. And there are many other natural dyers also learned from these processes. Next. Yeah, the main engagement was with the weavers, because weaving was the premises from where we started. And the entire Kala cotton emerged as a brand, and it helped many weavers in the region to increase their income. Many young weavers joined these processes through Kala cotton, and in Kutch now almost 50% of the looms are operating on Kala cotton. We also kept this idea open for the other weavers to join. So weavers like Shamjibhai and many others also started using Kala cotton later on, which really helped this initiative to grow. Next. So these are some of the impact, and the overall turnover, estimated turnover would be of this cotton would be around 15 crore. And it also helped to revive the entire spinning, the old spinning technique within the region. And it also impacted the farmers positively. It gave them a new identity. Now, many more weaving clusters are asking Kala cotton. Next. So there are also difficulties in identification, so that any 20s count is being understood as Kala cotton. And sourced fiber is still very difficult to spin with modern technologies. So we did many technical changes with the spinning to make it more relevant for the staple fiber, but the struggle is still there. We created a brand, but we didn't went into registration or any IPR, and we kept it open. So there is also churning going on to create a community ownership in labeling and branding that is under discussion. And we also, along with promoting spinning, we also want to promote a local technology-based solution. So that's the area that we are exploring at present. Next. Yeah, these are some of the sort of fabrics and explorations. We also combine with other craft traditions of Kutch like block printing, tie-dye, and many young weavers are also doing explorations on their own in the weaving and all. Next. These are some of the Kala cotton garments that went into the fashion world. Next. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghatit Bhai. Thank you very much. Kala cotton, a real success story. I think something for all of us to learn from. But the Kala cotton story actually doesn't end here. We're going to follow up with Shamjibhai, who I'm so happy to introduce. Shamji Vankar Vishram Valji, a visionary weaver from Bhojodi in Kutch. Inspired by his father's legacy, a national award winner, weaver, Shamjibhai has pioneered innovation and techniques in weaving and the use and the promotion of Kala cotton. Leading Vankar Vishram Valji weaving, he empowers 90 families in crafting fabrics, shawls, and rugs. Over 2 decades, he turned the venture into a global success, earning recognition as a master craftsman and receiving the UNESCO Seal of Excellence. Shamjibhai's international collaborations have elevated the profile of Kala cotton, showcasing its potential worldwide. Committed to holistic development, he preserves heritage, skill, and ecology, weaving a narrative of cultural pride and innovation. Welcome, Shamjibhai. So this is not going to be a presentation, but more a talk, a Q&A. I have a few questions for Shamjibhai. And Shamjibhai, I will give the questions in English, and then I can translate. But I know that you're very good and you understand everything. But we can speak both in Hindi, English, and then if we need, I'll just translate as we move along. So taking the story of Kala cotton forward, Shamjibhai, I really want you to share with us what initially drew you to embrace Kala cotton as a weaving material, because the world was moving towards synthetics and other materials, but you embraced Kala cotton. And how has its adoption, the adoption of Kala cotton, influenced your craft and your business over the years? So Shamji bhai, आपने काला कॉटन को embrace किया, and it as the weaving material. So आप थोड़ा उसके बारे में बताइए कि उसका adoption आपके craft को और आपके business को कैसे influence किया और आपने क्यों किया adopt? आपकी journey के बारे में थोड़ा सा बताइए.
ठीक. नमस्कार. आपको थोड़ा हिंदी में मैं बताता हूँ, फिर ट्रांसलेट करना पड़ेगा. जैसे वीव है वो हमारा पुरखों का काम है, और ये अभी हमारे बुजुर्ग बताते हैं कि ये 12वां जनरेशन है जो हम वीव करते आ रहे हैं. अनुराधा जी, मैं कंटिन्यू करूं, फिर आप एक साथ ट्रांसलेट करेंगे कैसे?
So no, I can translate. So Shamji bhai says that it's his heritage weaving, and for generations, his older generations have been talking about weaving as their heritage and cultural legacy. जी.
तो फिर जैसे बिफोर 1950 जो हमारे पुरखे जो काम करते थे वो लोकल समुदाय के लिए करते थे, और तब देसी कॉटन जो आसपास में होता था उससे, और देसी वूल जो गांव में भेड़ बकरियां से मिलता था उससे ही शॉल, कंबल, धोतीज और टर्बन्स ये चीजें बनाते थे.
So in the 1950s, his ancestors would weave with local cotton, with desi cotton, and for the local community, shawls and case and daris and like local like carpets, is what they would weave.
और फिर धीरे धीरे 60s करीब में मरीनो वूल भी आया.
In the 60s, merino wool came into play.
और फिर देसी वूल के साथ साथ, देसी कॉटन के साथ साथ मरीनो की चीजें बनी, और बाजार, जो लोकल बाजार था, उसे धीरे धीरे हटना चालू हुआ, और शहरी बाजार को भी ये चीजें मिलने लगी।
So, with the introduction of merino wool, the products changed. There was an influx both of merino as well as local wool, and the local community markets changed into larger sort of spaces, and also the products started moving out of the local markets.
और अराउंड 80s में एक्रेलिक भी आया, और फिर धीरे धीरे देसी वूल और देसी कॉटन का 70s के बाद बुनाई बहुत कम होने लगा, बंद होने की कगार के ऊपर खड़ा था। मरीनो और मिल मेड ये कॉटन और एक्रेलिक ज्यादातर वीव हो रहा था।
So in the 80s, there was an influx of acrylic, and the local wool and cotton came to a total slump at that point of time.
तो फिर हमने हमारे पुरखों से बातें सुनी थी, जो देसी कपास और देसी वूल के बारे में। वो चीजें हमने, हमारी पढ़ाई पूरी हुई 1995 में, तो हमने पहले ट्राई किया कि जो देसी मटेरियल है, जैसे नेचुरल डाइज है, उसको हमने रिवाइव करना चालू किया।
So in 1995, Shamjibhai finished his education, and at that point of time, he heard from his older generation, his father and his uncles, about desi cotton and about natural dyeing, and he wanted to work on that specifically.
हमको हमारे पिताजी ने जो हमारा बुनाई का पूरा सफर है, उनकी बातें सुनाई कि पुराने टाइम में क्या काम होता था, गुर्जरी ने क्या काम किया। बीच में 74 में हमारे पिताजी को प्राइज मिला, और पूरा एक स्ट्रगल का, उनके टाइम में जो काम किया, उनकी सारी चीजें हमको बताई थी।
So from his father, he learned about his father's journey with local material, with local wool, with kala cotton. Also, at that point of time, there were local emporiums that had opened during his father's time. And of course, he was proud that his father had also won awards at that point of time in weaving using natural materials. And so that was something that was leading him to move back into what his cultural heritage and his identity was.
तो जो पुरानी कलर्स और पुराना जो मटेरियल था स्थानीय यहाँ का, वो काफी हद तक बंद हो रहा था। तो हमने हमारी पढ़ाई पूरी करके हमारे पिताजी से बातें सुनी, आसपास के गांव से, पुरखों से बातें सुनी, कि जो यहाँ की चीजें डाइज में और मटेरियल्स में जो अवेलेबल है, उसको वापस कैसे हम अ, शुरुआत करें। उसके लिए हमने बातें सुनी सबसे।
So Shamjibhai, after his education, was very, very keen to take the local materials and local, not only the wool or the cotton, but also the natural dyes, because he felt that that is how he would retain the heritage and culture of his family and of the place where he lived in.
तो हमको हमारे पिताजी ने वही चीजें बताई कि जो हमारे काम के लिए, गांव के लिए और पूरे कच्छ के लिए वही चीज सबसे बेहतर है, मटेरियल्स में और डाइज में। कि जो पुराना तरीका था सब लोकल मटेरियल का, उसको जैसे पहले हमने वुल वापिस कैसे स्टार्ट किया, वुल को डाई करना और वुल की चीजें बनाना।
So from his father's learnings and experiences, he also took to natural dyes as well as local cotton and wool to make products and to take them forward. So Shamji bhai, आपका जो जी बताइए।
फिर अर्थक्वेक आ गया, और अर्थक्वेक के बाद 4-5 साल काफी सारा काम बंद हो रहा था, अराउंड 2001 से लेके 2004-5 तक कम हो गया काफी।
So after the earthquake from 2001 onwards, which happened in Gujarat, after the earthquake, the work really slid down a lot. And at that time, there was a crisis actually in Gujarat. in terms of materials as well as work of the artisan communities?
जैसे हमने बिफोर अर्थक्वेक वुल के ऊपर काम करना चालू किया, और अर्थक्वेक के बाद जो देसी कपास था, क्योंकि बुनाई हमारा ऐसा था कि पूरा मिलमेड कॉटन से ज्यादा काम हो रहा था, तो हमने वो सोच के काम किया कि जो देसी कपास जो पुराने टाइम में होता था, तो वो वापिस कैसे आए। खमीर है, सहजीवन है, सात्विक है, वो सब हम साथ मिलके हमको पहले यान मिला, जिसमें काफी सारे दिक्कतें आती थी। सही से उसका ट्विस्ट नहीं था, उसका उसका स्ट्रेंथ भी बहुत कम था, और ये चीजों को फिर हमने एक नए तरीके से सही से उसको मैनेज किया, और फिर उसको काम में लिया।
So before the earthquake, Shamjibhai and his family worked more on wool, which was local wool. After the earthquake, he started working with the cotton, and of course, desi cotton, as Ghatit Bhai also explained, because it was really short staple. The challenges that were faced of using this material was something that he went through, and he worked around. But श्यामजी भाई, मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहूंगी स्पेसिफिकली एट दिस पॉइंट कि आपको आप क्यों काला कॉटन के साथ ही आगे बढ़े? क्योंकि मतलब was it because so I'm asking Shamjibhai that why did you move forward with Kala cotton? Why did you also not use merino? Why did you also not go with the easier route? Was it because you wanted to retain your cultural heritage that your father so proudly always talked about? आपके पिताजी ने और आपकी फैमिली ने इतना आपके इसके बारे में आपसे बात करी, इसीलिए आप इसको आगे लेके गए कि और भी कुछ था आपको लगा?
नहीं, जैसे हमारे पास एक हमारा खुद का पुराना कलेक्शन है, जो हमारा पुरखों ने बनाया हुआ है, तीसरा चौथा पांचवा जनरेशन ने। वो सारा काला कॉटन की चीजें से टर्बन और धोतीस बने हुए हैं।
So from about 5 generations before Shamjibhai, he also looked at old textiles, which were part of his family's collection of turbans, as well as dhotis, which is like a lower garment that is worn in India. And that is what inspired him also. And all of that was made with Kala cotton. And that inspired him, of course, alongside with the stories of using this cotton and retaining the cultural identity. और शामजी भाई, आपने क्योंकि पहले तो सिर्फ टर्बन बनते थे और धोती बनती थी, so initially it was only turbans and dhotis that were made using Kala cotton. How did you turn that, just using those two products or those two things of your daily life, into products which created such a big business for you ultimately?
नहीं, जैसे हम पहले बात कर रहे थे कि जो देसी कपास से बनी हुई टर्बन और धोती थी, उस कपड़े के बारे में हमको जैसे पिताजी ने बताया, आज भी वो कपड़ा हम देखते हैं तो उसमें ऐसे लग रहा है कि वो सांस ले रहा है। और जो मिलमेड फैब्रिक्स धागे से बनाया हुआ वो कपड़ा है, उसमें उतना जान नहीं है, डिजाइन है। तो हमने जो हमारा इंटरेस्ट बढ़ता गया, और वो वही था कि वो देसी कॉटन से कैसे वो कपड़ा हम वापस बनाते हैं, जिसमें कपड़े में वो एक जान पैदा करे।
So Shamji Bhai talks about comparing mill-made textile or mill-made cloth to the hand-spun, hand-woven Kala cotton. And he said, when I would see the two, the Kala cotton, which was the hand-spun, hand-woven, had life in it. And that is really what drew me to working with this. And of course, the mill had the design and everything, but the life, what gave me breath was in this textile. So श्यामजी भाई, आप कुछ दिखाना चाहेंगे अपने सैंपल्स?
जैसे ये पुराने टाइम में टर्बन होता था, आज के दिन में ये काला कॉटन का स्टोल्स है।
So this
तो
used to
वही
be a
डिजाइन,
turban. This used to be a turban, and now he makes it as a stole. It's the same design, but innovatively placed so that it is used as a stole. जी.
तो जैसे ये कंबल से आया हुआ कॉटन का शॉल है, जो ये आहिर फार्मर्स लोग पहनते थे, सारे मल्टी कलर्स के।
this is something that very traditionally farmers used to wear to wrap around them to protect them from the cold. And again, those have been designed into stoles and shawls, which are used very contemporary sort of wear apparel.
जैसे ये देसी वुल नेचुरल डाई लाख से शॉल बनाया हुआ है। पहले लेडीज लोग यहाँ पे शॉल पहनती थी बड़े साइज का। आज ये इंडिया में हम शॉल की तरह यूज कर लेंगे, बाहर सब लोग थ्रोज की तरह यूज करेंगे।
Very nice. So in India, we use them as shawls. Of course, in overseas, people use them as throws. This one particularly has been made with lac. The color that you get, the rich color that you get is from lacquer. And of course, lacquer as well as indigo dye is something that Shamjibhai does in-house. And he dyes all of his products. This is indigo. This is natural indigo. Shamjibhai, ये नेचुरल इंडिगो है और ये भी काला कॉटन में बना है।
ये पीस वुल के साथ, देसी वुल के
ये वुल में, देसी wool. So this is desi wool. So using desi wool and kala cotton, Shamjibhai has created a range of products and really he has earned international recognition. I always call Shamjibhai the hero of craftsmanship as well as taking kala cotton forward. Shamjibhai, एक छोटा सा और क्वेश्चन मैं फटाफट से पूछूंगी कि जो हैंडमेड एंड कॉटन एक्सचेंज का शोकेस हुआ था इंटरनेशनल प्रोजेक्ट में, उसमें आप कैसे इन्वॉल्व हुए और उसको आगे क्योंकि इसके लिए इसी में ग्लोबल एक्लेम जो काला कॉटन को मिला था वो इसके थ्रू मिला था।
सही है, क्योंकि
So
जब 2000
I just asked the question. To elaborate, I just want him to give us his experience in the participation of international projects like handmade and cotton exchange, which actually showcased Kala cotton globally to the world. जी
2007-8 से जैसे काला कॉटन स्टार्ट हुआ, उसके बाद अर्चना शाह ने काफी उसमें काम किया, लेकिन धीरे धीरे वो बढ़ता गया और पहली बार हमको 2012 में मैनचेस्टर यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ काम करने का मौका मिला और तब हमने पूरा एक कॉटन एक्सचेंज का प्रोजेक्ट किया उनके साथ।
So in 2012, Shamjibhai was asked by Manchester University to do a project with them on Kala cotton, and that was the beginning of the international collaboration.
और उसके साथ वो एक प्रोजेक्ट ऐसा था कि कच्छ का जो देसी कॉटन है उसको अगर, और मैनचेस्टर का जो कॉटन पहले वहां भी होता था और यहाँ से मैनचेस्टर जाता था, उसको साथ में रख के पुराने तरीकों से कैसे वो कॉटन के धागों से वीव करते और आज के दिन में उसका क्या सिचुएशन है, उसको लेके ये प्रोजेक्ट सबसे सक्सेसफुली, और कच्छ के काला कॉटन को यूके और यूरोप में मेरे को लग रहा है कि उस प्रोजेक्ट से काफी सारा एक नाम मिला।
So basically, the project also talked about and also experimented on how cotton, local cotton, Kala cotton was also used overseas, as well as used for weaving with cotton from the UK and from cotton from India or Kala cotton. So that was the project which actually gave Kala cotton a global sort of introduction. And then it went forward from there. I think Kala cotton a big brand ban gaya hai. Kala cotton has become quite a big brand in terms of where it comes from and how it comes from. And I'd like to congratulate. मैं congratulate करना चाहूँगी Shamjibhai आपको, Khamir of course, who started the whole journey of Kala cotton. So yes, I think we're quite tight now on timing, Shamjibhai. So I want to thank you, Shamjibhai, for the wonderful work you've done, of course, on Kala cotton, and thank you very much for keeping our cultural sort of legacy alive. Ritu ji, I hand over to you now. Any questions from the audience?
Thanks, Anuradha, for your moderation. And we have just 15 minutes, so I'm going to rush. May I request all the panelists to please unmute yourself. And my first set of questions, the first set of questions that have come in are for Lorna and Stephen. One of them is not a question. One of them is asking them that, do you know of Rosie Bristow's research and project and her research in producing equipment for small growers of flax for fiber? And they have sent you a link and we will forward it to you. But this is an amazing thing that has come out from this seminar. The next question is from Argentina, again for Lorna and Stephen. And the question is, if the fiber in the floor undergoes a fermentation process, how long will it be on the floor before starting the clearing process? And the second part of the question is there a forum for flax producers to belong to from Argentina? So, Lorna and Stephen, over to you first.
Let me answer.
It will depend on the conditions, the weathering that takes place. But generally, I think it's between 4 and 6 weeks, that sort of time. But we've only had 2 years experience so far. So, but from what we've read, that I think that's the case.
Whether there's anything in Argentina, we couldn't say.
Thank you for that. We have a question for Karen, and that is, the question is, can you share the names of some of the clusters that you have traveled and visited and seen?
Yes, I can. Those that I remember, there's been many. In Jharkhand, and I might not be pronouncing the names right. I pronounce them in my head. Bagaya, and in Chhattisgarh, Champa, and Sioni, and in Odisha, now Patna and Gopalpur. And I'm sure there's others, but without looking at my notes, I can't remember right now. But that's 5 of them, I think.
Thank you for that. And there's a question for Ghatit. Ghatit Bhai, in which year did Khamir start? And could you tell us more about the development experience of integrating women into the work, which, as they weren't allowed to leave home earlier, how did you manage to get them into the whole working system?
So Khamir was initiated in 2005, and we started functioning from the Khamir Craft Park in 2007. And there were other organizations, Kasab Sujan and Kalaraksha, were working with women. So Khamir started working with slightly more male-dominated craft. And we got a good opportunity to integrate women into the craft through our upcycle plastic weaving initiative, where many of the women started weaving. At that time, not more women were joining the weaving process, and slowly the Kala cotton also opened the doors for the many women. As the weaving got stabilized, we worked in the area of hand spinning, where we could join many women with the spinning activity. So that's how our work expanded also in different regions and interior villages. In case of, if we are working with male artisans or weavers, they come to Khamir and sort of provide their woven fabric and all. In case of women, we organize all the operations in the field. So we take the raw material and we also collect the finished good. So that's how we have organized our sort of work in Kutch.
So Ghatit Bhai, there's one more question. And while it hasn't been touched on in this particular webinar, I know that Khamir has been very successful with its project on training women to weave with plastic waste. So that too has become a fiber of our time, not natural at all, but really taken from the environment that surrounds us and then recycled. So could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So we were facing a challenge to sort of work with the women weavers in and around Khamir at that point of time in around 2005 and 2007, that time period. And there were weaving clusters, but most of the men were working in the industries and women were at home. And we found this unique idea of sort of integrating the plastic waste with the weaving technique. So this traditional skill set holds a lot of potential to address the modern issues of so much waste generation. And that's where we started working with the upcycle plastic weaving. One of the first members who joined this process was Raji Ben, and later on she became entrepreneur and she's now running her own successful enterprise where she's also working with not many women and sort of created her own brand. So, and we kept, like other ideas, this idea also we kept open, like anybody who wished to understand this process, because this was a very basic process where we made some modification in the traditional loom so that we can use the plastic waste in weft, and in warp we can use the upcycled cotton or other kind of threads. So, and many other parts, people in the other part of India also visited Khamir, learned this, and they sort of took this knowledge in their respective places, and there are many more enterprises are all working. And there are good model of application created in this process.
Thank you, Ghatit Bhai. In fact, you'll be delighted to know that Raji Ben is one of the advisors for League of Artisans. So my last question, Shamjibhai, आपके लिए है कि ये प्रश्न है, did you get any help and advice about marketing and for increasing sale? आपको marketing और sales के लिए कहाँ से advice और सहायता मिली?
मार्केटिंग वैसे तो हम बोल रहे हैं, सब बोल रहे हैं कि आप क्या बिजनेस करते हैं, तो हम कभी आज तक बिजनेस किया नहीं है और हमारे काम में बिजनेस वर्ड ही नहीं है। ये एक वे ऑफ लाइफ, ये जीने का तरीका ही है और अपने आप काम बढ़ गया है, अच्छा हो गया है। तो हम ऐसा कभी मार्केटिंग ऐसा वर्ड यूज किया नहीं है और अभी हम करना भी नहीं चाहते। और ये जो आइडियाज हैं वो हम ऐसा सोच के चल रहे हैं कि जो ये पुरखों का देन है और वो हमको मिला है, वो हम संभाल के अच्छी तरह से काम कर रहे हैं और हमारे नई पीढ़ी को दे रहे हैं। तो ये कोई मार्केटिंग नहीं है, कोई तरीका नहीं है, ये जीने का ही तरीका है, उसको हम सही से संभाल रहे हैं।
Sir Shamji has responded very poetically. He says, we don't use the word marketing. We don't use the word branding or sales. This is a gift of our ancestors. And this gift, we just keep working on to the best of our ability, and we pass it on to our next generation. So on this wonderful note, we draw our webinar to an end, as the clock is struck and we have run out of time. But before I say my thank yous, I would like you to remind you that we continue to expand our programming at the League of Artisans. So please do stay in touch. Look at our website, our LinkedIn, our Instagram, and stay connected. Write to us. We would be delighted. But a huge thank you now to the Moderator-Anuradha, to the panelists, Shamjibhai, Ghatit Bhai, Lorna and Stephen, and Karen. This has been a marvelous learning experience. Thank you again for your time. And I thank the attendees, because when I look at the numbers, no, very few, if any, have dropped out. So thank you for being with us for this hour and a half. And Before I end, a very big thanks to my colleagues, to my co-directors, and to the advisory. So thank you and good night.
Thank you, Ritu very much, and the League of
Thank
Artisans. Thank you.
you.